Okay, I think we can start, and let me share my screen. Also, let me know in chat or by unmuting yourself saying that if some troubles with internet connection, if you hear me well or not well. Let's go. So, welcome everyone. My name is Georgii. Today I will give a talk about maximizing your real-world impact while working in tech. And shortly about myself, I've been working in IT for more than 10 years in various roles. I've been working as a software engineer at the very beginning of my career after graduating with a computer science degree. And then I transitioned to business analytics. And over the past 5 years, I've been working as a product manager in various products. I used to work in differently sized companies, big enterprises with very not flexible waterfall working methodologies and release cycles. At the same time, I worked in startups where it was less organized and we were doing everything all at once, and as well as in some companies with very well documented product methodologies where at the same time we had opportunities to improve the processes. And here I wanted to share some of my reflections of what tends to work well and how can the product teams jointly increase their output and the real world impact of what they're doing. Okay, well, let's start. My speech will be divided into 3 sections and the summary. I will start with introducing and recapping the concept of the product teams, and then walking you through the regular planning process and different aspects of it. Then we will go through an example of a proof of concept feature that and compare it to a minimum viable product to learn the differences. Finally, I will share a checklist on how to identify the appropriate moments and the appropriate projects to do a proof of concept prototypes for. And I think that's it. Let's move on. So yes, as I said, I used to work in different products of different companies throughout the time, but in all my speech, the same revolving term that I will be using is a cross-functional team or a product team, which I mean by engineers from depending on the specificity of the platform. There can be iOS, Android, backend, frontend. Some areas of product can be backend heavy, whereas some of them will be more customer facing. The product team also consists of an engineering manager or any other engineering lead. Usually in a product team, you also work closely with a product manager, potentially a product analyst, product designer, and maybe a QA and any other role that is specific for the company. But all in all, the product team as the whole squad is responsible for a certain part of the product or like part of the platform. And it is their area of responsibilities to make sure that this part of the product or the whole product is moving forward and achieving a goal. So an important part that I wanted to emphasize here is that as a part of the product team, you usually don't know what you're going to be building at any given moment. Like it's not, the product team is not told what to do, but they rather know their target and their goal. And it's up to collaboration of business stakeholders, product manager, and the product team and the engineering team to decide what is the most reasonable approach and what is the most what will be the roadmap and how we're going to be achieving the goals you are about to work for. So an important part of this process of working in a product team on a particular area is the prioritization. And at any given moment, you as a technical person or as a product person or as a business person are doing what you can to decide what is the next biggest thing that you're going to be delivering in order to improve the business metrics, the customer pain, like to relieve the customer pains, etc. So in one way or another, in the vast majority of the companies and teams I used to work for, I observed some form of the ICE methodology being used for planning and prioritization. It is not sometimes explicitly called like that in some companies, but in general, there are three main implicit factors that a product team takes into account to plan and prioritize a project. It can be it is usually the race is to optimize this ratio of impact versus effort. So a project that is potentially to be delivered with the highest possible impact and lowest effort, sometimes we call it quick wins. It is usually a first candidate to be developed because you know that you will have quite high efficiency of the time you're dedicating. And an important and quite frequently overlooked parameter of the prioritization framework is confidence. How confident are you in in the fact that your product will achieve what we expect it to achieve? So even though it is even though there are many more aspects that can influence the project's priority, these three are the core ones. And here is where the real world impact of a technical person and actually any person on the team kicks in, and you are able to apply your expertise and influence it. So as a technical person, you probably mostly work on the effort side of projects because it's impossible to plan not knowing for how long the project is going to take. What complexity is it? Does it have any external dependencies on other product teams, etc.? So this is the bare minimum, I would say, of the impact the technical person should have on the planning and prioritization process. So if you're working on the product team as a technical contributor, it's always a good rule of thumb that you know how the prioritization works and how your inputs on the effort estimations influence the roadmap. So this is the very basic thing, and still it's always a good idea to familiarize yourself and get to know the prioritization process better. Now, moving on, in this particular process, what I observed happening quite frequently is this optimization towards maximum ratio between impact and effort leads to cutting many corners and making really not perfect product and technical decisions. And in the end, this is sometimes as a symptom leads to the product teams building only MVP scopes of a project. Like you came out with a great idea, you tested it in the user sessions, and then you are forcing yourself to make it to the real world as fast as possible because the uncertainty is high, because you are not 100% sure it's going to be even getting any traction with the real world, and you're trying to cut the corners and deliver it as fast as possible to learn. And many projects in product teams do not make it beyond the very first iteration. So you just ship an MVP, then you switch to shipping another MVP, and this of course creates technical debt along the way. And depending on the particular team's methodology, the technical debt is either resolved constantly on a separate stream of work, or occasionally case by case after wrapping up the project, and you pause development for a certain amount of time to clean up and pay this debt. But nevertheless, this approach sometimes leads to a lot of MVPs being delivered, low maintainability, and high technical debt that always has to be built. So this is one of the consequences of over optimizing for low effort, I'd say. And I have some ideas on how we could improve this process, and I will walk you through them. But first, I need to jump back to the planning process again. as I said, those three parameters of the project's priority, like impact, effort, and confidence, it is like a living thing. It's not like you estimated the effort for delivering a feature and it's set in stone until you get this project into development. It is a constant race of reassessing the confidence, finding the most optimal scope, and optimizing the effort by eliminating dependencies and finding workarounds. And this process goes on and continuously. And in order to increase confidence, some teams use the so-called discovery and innovation process that helps you to increase the certainty on what are you about to build. Then one important concept of this discovery and innovation process is that it is quite frequently treated as a design and product and business thing to do. Like as a designer, you brainstorm, you prepare really nice looking interfaces and mockups, then you test them on user research. So this is what quite frequently is called discovery. But I would argue that the most efficient backlogs and the most efficient collaborations in product teams happens when every single person of the product team is involved in this innovation and discovery process, so that the roadmap and the time allocation of your product team looks like that. You spend less time on building product initiatives because you're building only high certainty product initiatives. At the same time, the tech debt amount sometimes really gets down because when you have high certainty of the project being delivered, it is the chances of this project getting to the next stage post MVP are higher, and also the time pressure to deliver it as fast as you can to prove if it's gonna work or not is slightly less when you have higher confidence. And this all gets in a way when you incorporate discovery and innovation process into your development process, into the design process, into the process of working with the non-technical stakeholders. So in order to do that, I would like to introduce you a proof of concept notion. And let me explain you what that means. In contrast to a minimum viable product, MVP, a proof of concept is a prototype. It's a small atomic change of your real world customer app, or of your real world product app or platform that will help you capture the real world metric in the wild, like as if the customers were really using this product. And the results of the proof of concept is the learning. And you are really doing short iterations of discovery to capture this learning, to increase the confidence on your product to be launched and prove the feasibility of certain projects. Here I have an example of how could you, to illustrate what's the difference between MVP and proof of concept. Imagine you are working, as I said, sorry, that's the slide about that proof of concept is destined to increase your confidence. So as an example, imagine you are working on a messenger app and your target is to monetize it and to increase your advertisement revenue on this messenger. And among all the others, imagine the product team and the product manager has a product idea to allow customers to promote their status to the users whom they don't have in their contacts, like based on geography, based on age or any other targeting logic. So this is quite a big initiative. You potentially could earn a lot of money by monetizing this feature, and this could be a big revenue stream. But there are a lot of uncertainties. For sure, you can test them by doing the designs and asking the customers in the user sessions whether it is gonna be something that they want or not. But in the end, the MVP of such a feature will be quite massive. Imagine, in the simplest version, the MVP scope of some advertisement platform will be allowing customers to promote some piece of content that they created, then asking them for a budget and maybe duration of the promotion, maybe other targeting specificities, etc. Then you need to also integrate with the payments provider to charge the customer for these services. And on the other side, you need to to feed all those promoted statuses to the users. And this is quite a massive scope, and there are a lot of things that can go wrong at any given step. So before committing and building such a monstrous feature, it is good to have different small atomic pieces of the project confirmed to make sure that you're building the right thing in the right form. Sorry. So as an example of a proof of concept that you could build to prove viability of such a feature, you could just build an interface for a promo creator to promote their status and just tell them that this feature is currently in development, and still ask for some important and viable, important input about the promotion budget, about their preference of whom to show this promotion, etc. And this particular prototype could give you certainty about what is the click-through rate and how many people show interest in running a promo, and further, what would be the expected budget that your audience is willing to spend on this promo. Now, of course, it doesn't cover all the uncertainties, but at least those two you will get to know really well through this prototype, because it's really close to how the users usually interact with your app. And yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that proof of concept is not a guarantee of success, and it doesn't actually bring any durable value to the customer. It's just a small step towards towards increasing your confidence and allowing yourself to fail fast. Imagine if in our example we observed through this proof of concept that no one clicks on this promote button, or no one specifies the budget of a promotion more than $1. That probably is a signal that the feature has low traction, or the customers do not understand why they need to do that. And these kinds of learnings reveal that your project has some challenges that are not yet addressed. So yeah, I just want to emphasize that proof of concept is not a silver bullet to eliminate all the uncertainty, but it really sometimes helps. But it's important to bear in mind that proof of concept testing is really still an expensive test, because more than one person probably will be involved in it. Maybe there will be engineers from backend and from front end or mobiles working together. And it is sometimes way more time consuming than just making a wireframe and showing it to a customer in the user session. But on the other hand, it has its pros, because it is as close to real life experience as possible. So the confidence for some particular metric that you want to measure is quite high. And yeah, that's it. I just wanted to also share a checklist on how to identify whether your product can be tested with a proof of concept, and what particularly you could test with your proof of concept. So sometimes proof of concepts are also called the riskiest assumption test, because in the riskiest assumptions test use the proof of concept, because when you're trying to achieve some real life goal and you have a metric to measure it, it is a good idea to do a pre-mortem and understand what is going to go wrong, and the project will fail. And if you have answers to those questions, you need to work as hard as possible to eliminate those uncertainties. Sometimes it will be addressed by the analysts on the product team, capturing some real world data from features that are already existing in the product and projecting it to your feature. But sometimes those assumptions that you identified cannot be replicated through any other proxy metric, and you could be using the proof of concept to confirm them. So narrowing the scope of the project down to the biggest uncertainties and the biggest points that will make your product fail is very important in this checklist. And even if not all the projects will lead you to delivering a proof of concept, if you just go through this checklist for any project you are working on, it's going to already increase the quality of the questions and your contribution to planning and delivering real world value, because it's always good rule of thumb for a project to have a goal. You should have this goal measurable and get to do this pre-mortem and know what will fail up front, so that you have a set of risks and the mitigation strategy for all of them. Sometimes maybe a product or business stakeholder on your team might not have answers to those questions, and this is actually a good thing, because then it reveals that you made an extra step, and you made the whole team challenge themselves and make sure that they're considering and doing the right thing here. And yeah, that even though in the end proof of concept might not be needed for every project, you still will be more aware of it and challenge any initiative from the prism of real world impact. So yes, that was it. I also wanted to tell in conclusion that in product teams, especially in cross-functional teams where you work closely with the product manager, designer, and analyst, and some non-technical stakeholders, everyone's opinion matters, and the teams that have ability to contribute to the prioritization session and influence not only the effort but also the scope of the project and to increase its confidence, these teams usually have the highest input and the highest success rate of the projects that they are building. So it is really, in order to maximize your real world impact, it is really essential to get to know what other people on your team are doing, to sometimes take an extra step and go an extra mile, asking them questions about how they are doing some particular things like prioritization, or how do they take into account efforts in the prioritization. And all of this will lead you towards higher impact. And now you also know the proof of concept is quite frequently used and in order to increase confidence and eliminate some risks before actually committing and building a fully fledged product. So even though not always these proof of concepts are used, having a checklist trying to steer you towards riskiest assumptions and identifying how you test those riskiest assumptions is a good idea. And I encourage you to adopt it and share your experience. I think this was it, and we have some time for Q&A now. And just one last bit, I have a slide with my contacts here, so feel free to follow up and connect on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out and ask any questions related to product methodologies, to any other organizational and frameworks related to prioritization, scope definition, and riskiest assumption testing. I will be glad to exchange experience. Also, feel free to share how your product team is working. I will be curious to know.